Alright, welcome back. Plastic Models by Regular Dude and the Bronco StuG Buddy Build with Peter's Plastic. So, I've completed steps 1, 2, and 3, leaving the wheels off, but all the suspension components are on. The wheels, drive sprockets, and idlers are assembled. So the next part, step 4, is assembling the gun mount and the breech. So I'm going to start cutting off parts and getting those cleaned up and start assembling some of this. Alright, I got the step 4 items completed, and this is it. It is the gun breech and mount. And here are a few notes pertaining to these parts. So these two parts here, there are no locating pins, so you have to be very careful to line the parts up. And what I did is I lined everything up as best I could. Then I used an alligator clip, ouch, and clamped it around this pin and held it in place. And then I just this flat area here from the other side, I just made sure it was lined up properly, and then applied the cement. Now it shows this part here, and after a little bit of test fitting and monkeying around with it, this part does not need to be in here while you're gluing these parts together. It would actually make it more difficult, because this part this part fits in there really loosely, and it would just be hard to try and line this up and then cement it and everything. So I cemented these two parts together, and this part pops into place. Then you put this part on there, holds it all together. That's all good. And then this part pops in there. That finishes up this well, and then you put this part on the inside here, and you have the first part of the sub-assembly complete. Then on this here, again, there are no locating pins, so you have to be very careful to make sure you have everything lined up. So what I did is I put the two pieces together. I made sure the basket for catching the spent shells, I made sure that was lined up perfectly, holding it from underneath, applying the cement from above, let that set up. Then I made sure these two parts, because it is pretty flexible, this part here is pretty flexible in relation to this, and this hasn't been cleaned up, and I'm not going to, because it's down inside the vehicle and you can't see the parts anyway. If it were something that was more exposed, I would, make sure everything was flattened. But this, all you have to see is just get the feeling of the gun inside of there, so I'm not worried about cleaning that all up perfectly. But get those two parts cemented together, and you end up with this piece here. Then you put the breech block together, or the breech, I should say, and get all that together, and you're good to go there. So then, once all that is complete, then you put these parts all together here. Fits together, no problems. These parts right here are kind of tricky. This pin right here fits into this hole, and it's got a kind of a half circle shape here and a half circle shape hole here. This pin is supposed to slide and interlock together, kind of like this, but it wasn't lined up properly, so I ended up just cutting it off, and I did have to bore this hole out slightly to fit. This was too large to fit in the hole, so I just had to do a little bit with the pin vise. Fit in no problem. I used my thicker cement on that just so I'd have some time to kind of position it correctly, so it was both vertical this way and this way. And it is a pretty delicate part, so you'll want to be careful. And then, oddly enough, this part here, I glued this part onto the gun mount first for the seat. Sorry, I got a little almost out of frame there. This part here, which is this, I glued that on there first. While that was drying, I glued the seat to the backrest, let that dry, then I put it on here, and it fit no problems. I used my Tamiya extra thin, and it worked great. So after all that was complete, then it's on to mounting the gun in the lower hull. I mounted this seat, which also serves as a platform for a figure, if you have a figure in there. I am not going to glue this whole assembly inside of the vehicle because I want to paint it separate. I want to paint the interior and the gun mount, the trunnion section, and then the actual breech part of the gun. I want to paint that, paint all this, get it in there before I assemble the rest of it. So I'm going to glue this in place, then this just pops right onto there like, whoops, like that, and you put the top on. So that is step 4. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on step 6 here, cutting out the parts and putting all those parts on, and then I will probably I'll take a look and see if I will be able to mount that gun after I put this upper hull on or not. And that'll decide what I do as far as painting, so we'll come back. Now that all of the hatches have been installed on the upper hull, I did a quick test fit, and the upper hull does hold the gun in place. So I'm going to have to do the interior and the gun before I glue this on top. So I think right there will be a good place to stop with this video. So in this particular video, I got steps 4, the gun and mount complete, the seat installed, step 5, waiting on this until I get the interior painted, and then step 6, all of the hatches on the upper hull portion, the main upper hull portion. So I'm going to call it quits right there so I can get some primer and paint on the inside of this. So as always, thanks for joining me here on Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, as always, leave them in the comments below. We'll see you all next time.